All right, folks, for the sake of brevity, all of the firearms that will be mentioned and illustrated in this video have been cleared prior to the filming of this video. All right. Hey there, folks. How you doing today? Hope all is going well for you. This is going to be the first part of a new gun owner do's and don't video that was requested by some folks. I put up a poll on the channel. Most folks seem to think it would be a good idea, so we're going to go with that. We'll see how this one goes over. It's certainly not all-inclusive, but if it is well received, next week will be part 2. That being said, I have 5 points written on this piece of cardboard right here. That way I can try to remember what I'm wanting to talk to about with you folks, because there is quite a bit involved in this. I'm going to try not to use any crazy terms. I'm going to try to keep it simple. I'm basing this on somebody who is new to the game, and this is how I would respond to somebody if they came to me while I was standing at the ammo shelf at Academy looking at stuff and asked me what I thought they should do. This is what I'm going to tell them. Just understand these are my opinions only. I'm sure some of you have better ideas than what I have. Feel free to make your own content and broadcast it to the world. That being said, as I mentioned before, all of these weapons have been checked. They're all safe and empty. There's no live ammunition on the table today. Again, as I mentioned, this is part 1. We're not covering everything, just the first 5 do's and don'ts that I want to recommend to the first-time gun buyer. All right then. Point number 1. Do buy yourself a gun. If you are legally able to do so and you live in a jurisdiction that will allow it, buy yourself a gun. A handgun. Something that you can use for your protection. Okay. Number 1, don't. Don't wait until the last minute, folks. Please. Everybody saw the civil unrest that broke out a couple of years ago and lingered on. Everybody that thought about buying a gun saw the lines outside of the gun shops. They saw the prices go through the roof. I saw people at the flea market just up the road from me scalping 9mm for $100 a box. That's $2 a round. That's ridiculous. Don't wait until it's too late. Okay, point number 2. What kind of gun should I buy? Well, as I mentioned before, get a handgun. I'm telling you right now, from personal experience, from a professional standpoint, buy a 9mm. Period. A 9mm Luger. 9x19, 9mm Luger. I've got a whole series of videos on the 9x19. If you're not aware of what that is, just trust me. Get a 9mm. You'll thank me later, right? Point number 2, don't. If you don't buy a 9mm, please, folks, don't buy something weird. Don't buy a 357 SIG because, well, my uncle was a state patrolman and he carried a 357 SIG and he said it was bad. Don't do it. Just, you're not going to be able to find ammo, and if you can, you're going to pay 3 times the price that you would for a 9mm round. Just leave it at that. And as a side note to that point, there's a brand new cartridge on the market, the 30 Super Carry. Don't buy that either. Please, just trust me on that. All right, so before too many of you pick up rotten tomatoes and throw at me for number 2, let's talk about number 3. Number 3, do. Buy something you can afford. While the world is your oyster concerning how little or how much you can pay for a handgun, suffice it to say that you and you alone are responsible for evaluating your budget and determining what you can afford. Just remember, folks, at a bare minimum, however much you pay for that gun, you still have to buy some ammo for it and preferably a holster. So just, at a bare minimum, figure to tack on $100 to whatever price you see advertised. And let's not forget tax and possible transfer fees at the federal firearms licensed dealer. That would apply more to folks that were buying a gun online because they found it cheaper than at Academy, and then they realize, oh man, I just had to pay $40 shipping, and this guy down here at the shop down the road wants $45 to do the transfer. Well, now guess what? That $50 you saved just turned into $90. It's gone. So keep that in mind. As a general rule, I would say that for the first-time gun buyer, somebody who's buying a gun because they feel the need to protect themselves, and that's good, depending on your situation, spending a month's salary on a new handgun might not be the best idea. plan accordingly. All right. With that being said, number 3, don't buy a high point. Yes, folks, the Yeet cannon. For the love of all things holy, please listen to me on this one. Do not buy a high point. You'll thank me later. I understand there are a multitude of folks out there that own high points that love them. I appreciate you folks. I'm not poo-pooing your gun. I'm telling folks that don't have one yet to buy something else. There are many reasons for that. We're not going to delve into the weeds on this today. You're watching this video because you want my opinion. I'm telling you, stay away from the high point, please. You'll thank me later. All right, folks. Point number 4. Do buy something normal. Buy something widely available. Buy something that you could go to 3 different stores in your town and find. I'll give you a couple of examples here. Most of you already know what I'm going to say. If your budget will allow you to do so, buy a Glock 19. I can think of no better gun for the first-time gun buyer. That is my opinion only. That being said, for literally about half the price of a Glock 19, you can have a Taurus G3C. As I've mentioned in this video before, those are my top 2 choices to recommend to somebody who asks me. Now, that being said, there are plenty of other guns out there that are just as good. There are plenty of other guns out there that are arguably better. I'm just telling you, from a logical and practical standpoint, these 2 are probably the best. You can walk into any sporting goods store and find an extra magazine for a Glock 19 or a good holster at a reasonable price for a Glock 19. That's not always the case with everything else. With that in mind, if you just don't like Glocks, you don't like the idea of a Glock, another really good option that's widely available and in this case is very economical in that it comes with everything that you might need to go with it, with the exception of ammo, is the Canik TP9 Elite. Get the subcompact. It's a little smaller than the Glock 19. It's a little bigger than a Glock 26. Let me show you those side by side so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. This one is a little small for some things. This one is a little large for some things. That Canik TP9 Elite is kind of right in the middle and should be considered a very good choice. Now, with that in mind, concerning firearms that are widely available on the market today, I'm going to go with point number 4, don't. Don't buy a Smith & Wesson SD9 VE. Stop throwing the fruit, stop. Okay, I'm not being funny, folks. Sure, they're okay guns. Sure, with a little work, maybe a little chamber polishing or a few hundred rounds in, they smooth out and they become very good, very reliable guns. Lately, in the past 6 months, concerning something that I had posted in the past, I've had numerous people reach out to me telling me about issues they've had with SD9 VEs or with SD40 VEs. That's the 9mm or the 40 caliber version. Don't get caught up around that part. From my personal standpoint, there are better options available. Steer clear of that one. The other side of normal and don't get it, and this is something that's also going to rattle some cages because a lot of my viewers are Micro 9 fans. This, folks, is the Taurus GX4. This is one of my favorite guns. It's a very good gun, and it's very good for what it's good for. That being said, I do not recommend the Taurus GX4, or for that matter, my hot and in the pocket SIG P365, which is my favorite little pistol. I don't recommend a Micro 9 pistol to a first-time gun buyer. While the modern Micro 9, that by definition is about this size and holds at least 10+1 rounds, are really, really good options for a lot of people. If you're a first-time gun buyer, if you don't have much experience shooting, if you're new to the game, this is not the easiest platform to become proficient with. They're little bitty guns. They're hard for some people to shoot. I'm not making any of that up. Go to any range in town and ask. The seasoned instructors will tell you the same thing. They're just not the best choice for a new shooter. On the other end of that same, and I realize we're getting way off into the weeds, but on the other end of that same token, don't buy something like this 1911 for a first-time gun buyer. Now granted, this one's a 45. We've already talked about getting a 9mm is, my opinion, the best choice for you. But something big and clunky like this 45, while accessories might be readily available, in my opinion, just isn't the best choice for a first-time gun buyer. Get something middle of the road, like a Glock 19 or a Taurus G3C, or somewhere in that range. So moving on to our final point, point number 5, on the do side, kind of building off of the do buy something that's readily available like the Glock, do buy a proper holster. And by a proper holster, I mean a holster that fits you well, that was made for your specific firearm. So I'll do some close-ups of these, but we're going to talk about them right now. This Glock 19 right here is in a Phobos paddle holster. The paddle goes inside your pants, hangs over your belt, and the pistol and the holster are exposed on the outside of your belt. This is a very practical way to carry a lot of firearms, specifically where you can cover it with a jacket or a heavy shirt or something like that. Or if you're out hiking in the woods, or if you're on your own property, this is a good way to carry. It makes it easily accessible, and it's secure, and these are relatively inexpensive. Another good option for a holster would be something like this inside the waistband Kydex holster. Again, these are model specific. This one is designed to go inside your pants with just the clip and the rear end of the gun hanging out. They're a lot more concealable than the paddle holster I just showed you, but they also require a little bit more effort to draw from efficiently. While we're talking about holsters, with the exception of the Taurus G3C, I would recommend that you also pick up at least 1 or 2 extra magazines also. The G3C comes with 3 magazines right out of the box, so that's probably enough for most folks. Most handguns only come with 2, and it's really nice to have at least 3. But that's just personal opinion, and it really doesn't apply to a self-defense situation in most cases. All right, so model specific, either inside the waistband or a paddle outside the waistband, something like that. Moving on, point number 5, don't buy some kind of soft universal fit holster if you're planning on trying to carry it concealed. Those are okay if you're wearing it on a belt out in a hunting situation, but I really don't recommend them to most folks. If you buy something common, a model specific holster is not going to cost you that much, and you're going to be a lot happier and probably a little bit safer with it in the long run. Now that being said, for the first time shooter, for the novice shooter, for somebody who lacks experience and maturity in carrying a firearm on their person, I do not recommend that you jump right out of the gate and buy an appendix inside the waistband rig. There are several reasons for that. For one, they're not, for some folks, the easiest to manipulate around. 2, they're also rather expensive. 3, You almost need a specific kind of belt to carry one of these properly. We'll talk about that more maybe when I do an upcoming video on this Walther PDP. But I think, and most of you probably already know where I'm going with this, the most important reason why I don't recommend an appendix inside the waistband to the brand new shooter is...
You'll shoot your eye out, kid. Ho, ho, ho.
I don't think we need to elaborate any further on that one. So anyway, folks, I've rattled on for a bit now. I've taken enough of your time. There are certainly more points that come along with this. Understand this is part one of something at a ground level introduction. If I can get some likes or some comments on this, if we can get some views on it that help to push it past the algorithm, then next week I will move on to the what to do with that new gun that you bought do's and don'ts portion of, well, this series. So until next time, folks, take care. I do not recommend the SIG GX4.